So I'm going to do that. There we go. And the new join is still connecting to audio, so I don't want her to.
Sure.
And there we go. I think they're connected. Thank you so much for being here tonight, everyone. And a special thank you to Belinda for being our presenter tonight. I'm very interested in the topic, having 6 kids myself, that she is going to present on this evening. And I am not going to take up any more of her time because I really want to get to the meat of what she's going to share. So I would like for Belinda, if you could share a little bit about yourself and who you work with, who you're presenting on the behalf of, and what you're going to talk about. And I'm going to mute myself and listen. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you so much for hosting me. My name is Belinda Swan, and I serve as an outreach manager for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. If you're not familiar with us, you may, what may come to mind or jog your memory, we were founded in part by John and Reve Walsh, who unfortunately suffered their own personal tragedy in the 1980s when they lost their own son, who was abducted and later found murdered in the early 80s. And they took that grief and turned it into a very, very committed passion to providing services and to families and survivors, and also to helping to prevent similar situations from happening to other families. And so it was that passion that started with missing children's posters on the back of milk cartons. And I know I'm aging myself with that. And that has, of course, evolved into online missing children's posters, social media platforms. And it is also, our organization has also evolved to address several other issues, including internet safety, which is why we're here tonight. So this is your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. But we are going to go ahead and dive right in. Some of the topics may make us a little uncomfortable, but what I like to say is that on the other side of being uncomfortable is understanding and being able to recognize some of these issues, address them, and prevent them as well. So again, Belinda Swan with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Our website can be found at the address on the screen. And particularly, this presentation is part of our NetSmart's child safety programming. And so you can download this presentation in English and Spanish. We have a variety of videos and tip sheets that you can find. And every single one of the videos and other items that I mentioned in today's presentation can be found on that website as well, most of which are also available in Spanish should you need that for your own church organization, school organization, if you'd like to share some of these materials with your family or friends or colleagues. So I would like to start off the conversation by first thinking about how our children are accessing the internet. I start off this conversation the same every time, because I think it's important to recognize that we do have a blind spot, right? I am 43 years old, and I recognize that half of my life I lived without smart technology, without a cell phone for sure, right? And so even though I'm quite adept, I should say, and I've adapted over the years, I still recognize that I have a blind spot, right? I still learn, I still problem solve in ways that are much different from children of today's generation, right? It is no secret that today's generation of children are digital natives. They've never known a life without instant access to their favorite content, right? They certainly don't know the pain of having to wait until next Thursday or Friday to watch the next episode of their favorite show. And if they have a question, they know how to go to Google. So again, we have this this blind spot. No matter how with it we may think that we still problem solve just a little differently, and we still engage and we still think about how we express ourselves online just a little bit differently. And that's going to come into play into a lot of the topics that we talk about today. So again, thinking about what our children use to access the internet, and then what are they doing online, right? Most of the parents and community members that I speak with say, of course, they're doing their homework. In the last 5 to 10 years, they're definitely gaining a lot more online, and they've moved from computers to platforms, of course, like Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo Switch and the like, right? So we think that that we have a pretty general good handle of the kinds of things that our kids are doing and how. but are we having the right conversations with them about some of the dangers they may face? I challenge us to be super open-minded this evening about some of those questions. There's no judgment here, and there's no judgment of the children or the situations that we're going to discuss in which some of the children that have been reported to the National Center have found themselves in. We can learn from these experiences to make sure that we can engage in a way similar to how we talk to our kids about putting on their seatbelt before we put that car in drive, right? How we have taught them over time to look both ways before they cross the street. We have spent so much time dedicated to making sure they know not to go with or speak to strangers, especially when we're not with them. But have we had these same kinds of nuanced conversations with them about their activity online? And so after you leave tonight, I hope that you will have some more or feel more empowered to have these kinds of conversations and know where to go to get some additional resources to have those conversations. So these are the topics we're going to talk about this evening: inappropriate content, online privacy, sexting, online enticement, and cyberbullying. Why these topics? Because these are the topics that get reported to the National Center consistently. The National Center does serve as a clearinghouse for the entire country for reports of anything involved with the online enticement of a child. And that is, of course, our cyber tip line, cybertipline.org, or 1-800-THE-LOST is our hotline. Both are available 24 hours a day and in a variety of languages as well. And so we analyze the data annually, quarterly, you name it. And then we're able to kind of see what bubbles to the surface, right? Which topics, which kinds of cases, what's happening to our children online the most? And certainly the cases fall under these categories. And that's why we have decided to utilize these to highlight when we talk to parents and guardians and community members such as yourselves. So now we know we have a problem, and I will share in 2020, at the height of COVID lockdowns, we saw about a 30% increase in overall reports to the cyber tip line. But of those reports, we saw an almost 100% increase in online enticement reports. We can connect the dots and deduce that, more children were at home. More children were at home unsupervised, right? A lot of folks had to go to work, right? And children had to navigate, education and socialization on their own at home. Sadly, perpetrators knew that as well. Perpetrators historically have always gone where the kids are, right? And the online world is no different from that. Have things changed? No, kids may be, in person, and folks may be able to, send their kids to school in some areas more so than others. But one thing we've seen is that the reports of online enticement and other types of images, such as youth-produced content, which we'll talk about in a few slides, continue to rise. So regardless of pandemic lockdowns or not, this generation of children and perpetrators and predators have learned how to navigate this space to socialize and to ultimately take advantage of our children. So we don't foresee that is going to change anytime soon, right? Some of the things we've learned to do online, that we've perfected to do online, maybe the pandemic served as a catalyst, but we're certainly not going to go back to the way we did things before. And that's the case with a lot of these instances. So how do we talk about that, right? We know this is an issue. It seems a little overwhelming. So how can we talk about these kinds of things? Well, I want you to leave tonight knowing that it's never too early or never too late to talk about these issues with your children. When we are thinking about how to discuss these issues with our younger kids, maybe, 5th grade and younger, maybe even 3rd grade and younger. My rule of thumb is if your child is old enough to be trusted with a tablet or a cell phone for whatever amount of time, then they are old enough to understand this conversation, right? So when they're younger, we can start out by talking about netiquette, which is, of course, the play on words, right? Which is starting to pave the way for a more nuanced discussion about cyberbullying when they're older. We can talk with them about what to do when they see, when they come across inappropriate content. And I know that sounds daunting, but I'll share a tip with you in a second. Pop-ups and passwords, especially with our littles, right? Certainly been scammed by my own child when she was 3. She loved to play on my Kindle, my fault. Didn't have that parental control set up, and she ordered several Elmo books and games and videos, right? That's it happens, right? So we have to teach our kids when they're old enough to be trusted with that tablet, how to handle those situations, even when they're littles. And that's going to pave the way for more nuanced conversations again, not trusting everyone you meet online. And that can turn into conversations about meeting offline. So again, never too early, never too late. And these can't be one-off conversations, right? This can't be, well, I met this person from the National Center. We're going to sit down as a family. We're going to have this conversation and then never talk about it again, right? These are conversations that have to happen often, just as we have those same kinds of conversations about dating, about, personal etiquette, when at school and interacting with others and with strangers. This has to be added into our repertoire, as it were, when we're thinking about things we've got to discuss with our children. And as I mentioned, we have a ton of resources. Our Club UIN, or Use Your Net Smarts, is extremely popular. It's used by districts all over the country. All of our resources are free. Again, we are congressionally mandated to implement several programs, and we certainly work very hard to use the data that we collect to create resources that you can use with your own children and with your colleagues in other social groups. And so we have several videos. These are three of our main characters that the kiddos love. That's Clicky and Nettie and Webster, and they go on a series of adventures where they encounter various cyber dangers. And we also have discussion guides, activity sheets, bookmarks, coloring books, you name it, to kind of that include these same characters to help to reinforce some of the topics. And so I'm going to skip this video only because it is exactly what I just explained, and it's about 3 minutes long, and I want to make good use of our time tonight. But it is available on our website, and that was at that missingkids.org/netsmarts website. Each one of the videos is available for you to watch. But again, it's placed in this presentation simply to show you the different types of resources we have, not only for older children, but for younger children. And I will use this time to share instead that a lot of the data from our trusted resources and some other partners in the field who have conducted studies and continue to monitor children's use of the internet and what they're doing and how, it does indicate that children are participating in some of these behaviors at younger ages. So kids, sometimes as young as 8 and 9 are sexting, and that was found in a report conducted by the Thorn agency or organization, I should say, and I can share that link with you, Sandy, to disseminate. And so again, is it because kids are worse, or kids are just so bad, or is it the internet? It's none of those. What it is access, right? It's a problem of access, right? If we're gifting our kids with smart technology and devices at a younger age, it goes to show or to say that they're going to have access to some of these different kind of images and videos at a younger age as well. So all of that to say is that it's certainly a good idea to have some of these conversations with our younger children as well. And again, these are done tastefully and in a manner to introduce the topics and continue to reinforce some of these safety and protective behaviors. So inappropriate content, right, was the first thing on our list of things to talk about tonight. How do we talk about inappropriate content with kids this young, right? This picture is almost a juxtaposition. We have this beautiful young child holding this tablet next to these horrible words, right? How do you talk about that with young kids? It's very simple. Again, if they are old enough to be trusted with a smart device, it's as simple as having a conversation like this. You can say, I trust you to watch this, your iPad for a few minutes today, or to watch these videos today, or to finish your homework. But I want you to know that if you see anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, that scares you, or makes you feel yucky, please come and tell me and we'll talk about it. You're not in trouble, but you need to come and tell me. That's it. You just had a conversation about inappropriate content. No need to delve into the specifics related to pornography and excessive violence with younger children. Simply telling them that if they see something that they know is wrong, they're not sure why, or if it makes them scared or uncomfortable, or makes them feel icky or yucky, come and talk to me. You've done your job. They know now that it's okay to come and tell you that they're not in trouble and they're not going to get in trouble. Rather, they can have an honest conversation with you about what happened, right? 9 times out of 10, a child has clicked on the next bright thing with flashing colors. And this is done intentionally by some predators as well, right? To get our children to view some of these images and videos. And so we certainly want them to make sure that they feel that they can trust us, right? And so on the other side of that, how do we respond when they finally take us up on that, right? You've come to this presentation, you've shared the videos, you've done the activities, and you've had the frequent conversations with your children. When they do turn to you, when they finally, if and when it happens, and statistically it likely will, we've got to make sure that we keep our own emotions in check. I'm a mom and I am fiercely protective of my child, as we all are. And my first instinct may be to be upset and angry and to show visibly that I'm angry, not at my child, but at what has happened and at the thought that someone has tried to expose my child to this, right? But we have to remember that how we respond initially to the first time that our child takes us up on our offer to come to us when something like this happens is going to lay the groundwork to whether or not they're going to come to us in the future, right? So don't frighten them, listen attentively and stay calm, remind them it's not their fault, answer their questions and help them report it. My kid loves to help in the kitchen. She loves to help with all kinds of things, right? Helping them to report it to the cyber tip line gives them a sense of closure, and it also makes them feel that they are part of this process, this horrible thing that has happened that scared them. They were able to work on it with mom, dad, grandma, aunt, uncle, whomever that trusted adult in their life may be. So some pointers about how to respond if and when it does happen. What they should do, certainly have some actionable items to share with you that you can share with your children. I highly recommend that, when the holidays are near, if you plan on purchasing a smart device for your child, no matter how old, then you should familiarize yourself with its capabilities first, right? Take that thing out of the box first, read about it, learn about all of the different safety features on it. And each time an app is downloaded on that device, are you familiar with the app's capabilities? Do you know how to report inappropriate content to that specific app? If you don't, you should, and then you'll be able to educate your child about it as well. So you should first know how to do these things and then be able to discuss them with your child, right? To turn off the screen, especially with our littles. Use the back button, tell a trusted adult, report it to the website or app. Just about every website or app has a reporting function associated with it, not just social media apps. Report it to the cyber tip line, and we can help to package and research some data to send to the appropriate law enforcement jurisdiction. And so again, these are some things that you can work on together and frequently and often to make sure that we're reinforcing that, just as we're concerned about who your friends are and when you're going to spend the night in so-and-so's house, we want to know their parents, we want to know who's going to be there, we want to make sure we can stay in contact with them while you're not in the home. We want to make sure we have that same kind of vigilance when our children are online, right? So when our kids are a little bit older, especially if they have your permission to engage on a social platform, whether that's Instagram or TikTok, they're not on Facebook, right? So don't start any conversation with, well, when you're on Facebook, because you'll instantly lose credibility, right? Children are gravitating toward, of course, TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram. So, and Twitch, right, for our gamers. And so things that we've got to make sure we discuss with our older children are inappropriate or illegal behavior, offensive language, threats of violence, underage drinking or drug use, and hate speech. And one of the things that I have found, and in my own life, my own personal life as well, is that, of course, we recognize that no matter how many rules we set in our own home, when we let our children out into the world, everyone's rules and expectations are different, right? So we have to be clear about what's expected of our children, and whether it's okay at so-and-so's house or not, it's not okay overall. And this is why. Some of the things that we do when we share this presentation with teenagers and tweens, it's a little different, but the concepts are the same. We definitely use headlines from their local area and maybe even nationally, right? I mean, we just had a pretty big one in the news last week, right, with the NFL, right? So and I always get asked this question, in my teens as well. Well, I have the right to say whatever I want. You're absolutely right. You do. But organizations, colleges, folks that you may be trying to secure an internship with, they may not feel that the things that you've posted online are a good reflection of their company values or whatever that may be, right? And so it's important that we communicate that with our children too, right? This is forever. The internet is forever. Even, if someone takes a screenshot or someone, records your feed, that's not going to go away. You no longer have control. And that's something we certainly share with children when we discuss this with them as well. You lose control the moment you hit send. So take a deep breath, How does this reflect who I am? Is this what I want the world to know about me, right? So these are some important things to talk about our children, that these things are never okay to post ever, right? What you can do, again, connect, learn, and engage. Learn about their interests. One of the most rewarding things or fun things that I can say that, my child, when she loves to play Animal Crossing and the latest Mario Brothers games, and we play together on Friday nights, and while we're playing, I remind her, hey, we have that option turned off because it's not okay to play with strangers. Okay, mom. Yeah, I know, mom. And we continue to play. I'm showing a vested interest in what makes her happy. And I'm able to kind of remind her as we go why it's important to not do those things. Sometimes we're putting, the game cartridge into the console, and she's reminding me, mom, we're going to play, but we're not talking to strangers. It's like, well, it's working. So these are some things that you can do often, regularly, to make sure you're reinforcing all of the things that you want your children to remember when they're engaging online. We're going to talk about online privacy, and I think the biggest takeaway I have for you about this is that we can't make assumptions, right? We can't make assumptions about adults and their ability to recognize the dangers of posting too much online. We certainly can't make assumptions about our children. Just because it may seem like common sense to us to not share their email address, their passwords, their home address, or where they go to school with strangers online, doesn't necessarily mean that it makes sense to them. There are certainly a lot of scams and ways that predators and perpetrators, some for sexual purposes and others for financial, try to connect with children, is by offering, I work for a modeling agency and I think you're beautiful. Send me your contact information. Let's talk offline, those direct messages, right? Those DMs, those kinds of things. Well, have we talked to our children about this? Have we explained to them that not everyone they meet or engage with online is who they say they are? Have we given them permission explicitly whether or not they can post pictures of themselves or their families, or their family or friends, right? Have we had that conversation? Have we made it very clear that we would not be okay with them sharing their personal information with a stranger in person, right? So we're not okay with you sharing your personal information online, and this is why. And sometimes when I present to kids, and I ask them, what would you do if someone asked for your personal information in person? The answers are the same. I wouldn't tell them. I'd go get my dad. I'd tell the manager of the store. I'd call my principal. All kinds of great answers. But then I asked them, okay, great. Well, then, why are we doing this online, right? The screen creates this false sense of protection, and makes adults and children alike feel anonymous, and that's just not the case, right? So are we having these conversations? Are they allowed to have conversations with unknown people on online game platforms, right? With proper supervision, it's not an issue, but it can go wrong very quickly, right? Even if they do have supervision, right? So are we having these conversations with them? Creating videos on streaming services, of course, right? TikTok, some school assignments require it. When we present to children in elementary school, we play a game to reinforce these concepts. And one of the questions we ask is, what would you do, right, if you are streaming or videotaping for a project, a school project, and then while you're editing, you recognize that your home address is on, right? You can see it's behind you. And most of the kids will say, oh, well, we're deleting that and starting over. Nobody needs to know where I live. Yes, right? I love to hear that. But not every child is making that connection, right? So we need to make those connections for them. Again, for a perpetrator, whether it's for sexual purposes or some other nefarious reason, can connect the dots very easily when we let our guard down and get too lax with their online privacy. That goes for adults and that goes for children, right? So checking in or sharing your location online, certainly seeing adults who forget this rule and maybe go on vacation and share, exactly where they are at every given moment, and are showing, these amazing photos, but are also showing everyone on their friends list and followers list, especially if they don't have a private account, that they're not home and they're not coming home anytime soon, right? So again, are we connecting the dots for our kids? And of course, we have to have talks with our children about sending, viewing, sharing explicit or provocative pictures, and we'll get into that in detail. So again, let's connect the dots for our kids. Let's not assume anything, and make sure that our kids are understanding why the same rules that apply in person apply online. So examples of personal information, of course, are passwords. Certainly seen instances where kids are best friends one week and they're sharing passwords and they're posting cute things in each other's feeds, and then for whatever reason they're no longer best friends and they're using this to harm one another, to cyberbully one another, create fake profiles, and to humiliate one another. It's just awful. So it's okay, right? We have to reinforce to our children and empower our children that it's okay to say no. A real friend is going to say, okay, I understand, right? And just like we wouldn't want them to ask someone else for this information, their passwords, right? So home address, location, home, cell phone number, and email address. It's just not okay to share that information with someone we don't know in real life, right? That we don't have permission from our trusted adult to share. Some of the risks, of course, are identity theft, online scams and hacking. Online enticement and sextortion are also a huge risks of sharing too much personal information online, and we'll discuss that in greater detail. So what can you do today or tomorrow or whenever you decide to have this conversation with your children? Make your rules clear, right? Establish your rules about what they can share online. Another thing I want you to think about, and again, we certainly not saying, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but it's important to think about things, right? So if our child, they're doing all the right things, their profile's restricted, all of their followers and who they are following or whom they are following, but their profile picture is a picture in a school spirit shirt, maybe, then it doesn't take very long for someone to figure out where they are every day from 8 to 5, right? Or 8 to 4. So just kind of thinking about those kinds of things. What am I saying about myself and how I can be accessed with even my profile picture, right? So help them set privacy settings, help them create strong passwords and make sure they're changing them regularly, and talk about those friends lists. That is so important. So many times, even adult friends of mine have done a quick run through of who their followers are and said, I don't remember approving this request. Did we go to high school with this person? Who is this person? Who have I given access to family vacation photos of my children, right? So these are things we have to talk about with our children as well. We've got to make sure that they know who their followers are and who they are following, right? So the next topic is sexting, and all of this, all of these topics kind of they feed into one another because the internet is so complex, right? And the ways that we interact and engage. And I want you to take some time to digest some of this information. 15% of teens have sexted, 27 say that they've received a sext, right? And again, these are the children who were brave enough to admit, right? And so we know that these numbers are higher. And we also know that, as I mentioned earlier, children are engaging in these behaviors at a younger and younger age, not because they're worse or whatever, simply because they have access, right? We've given them access to the entire universe. Are we having the right conversations with them about these behaviors, right? And it's complex, it's scary, it can feel a little intimidating to think about this. Again, I'm a mom myself, but some of the ways we have to be extremely open and honest and think about some of the reasons why kids are engaging this. I like to say, I think often about a couple of the class clowns in my high school years who certainly did a lot of things just to get a laugh, right, in class. And that goes for today's kids as well, right? They're going to moon the camera. They're going to use inappropriate gestures. They're going to try to get a rise out of everyone, right? Some of the old tried and true reasons exist today as well, right? To impress a crush, peer pressure, or threats. And they're experimenting with relationships and sexual behavior and boundaries, just as every generation before them. And I know it's uncomfortable to think about that and our children, but it's an uncomfortable realization that we have to make so we can address it and prepare our children for the real world, right? So children are still having questions about their bodies, about sex, about all kinds of things that they may be too embarrassed to discuss with their trusted adults. And now what's different is that they have the entire universe at their fingertips in their pocket, right? In that cell phone or that tablet or that laptop or whatever it is that they're using, and what we thought of when we opened this conversation. So what can we do about it, right? What can we do? I am going to share this video. It is a well done video, if I do say so myself. It can be found on our website. We also have discussion guides that complement this video to help guide you to have this conversation with your children. But I'm just going to go and play it now, make sure that you can hear my sound quickly. and then we'll talk about it in just a second.
You probably get lots of messages every day, but what if you got one like this? What would you do? Would you send a picture? No? Cool. That's an easy way to protect yourself. But what if you'd chosen differently? What if you send a picture? They'd never share it with anyone else, right? Do you want the picture shared with others? Sorry, you no longer have a choice. It's out of your hands now, because sometimes people we trust break that trust. Maybe the person you sent the picture to shows it to some friends. Maybe they send it to a couple friends, who send it to a couple more friends, you get the idea. It spreads, and you never know who might see it. Your little brother? Your mom? Other people at school?
Seriously? And I would never.
Even strangers could get a hold of your picture. You never really know where that picture will end up.
Look at it.
How long it will be out there, or what the consequences will be. Don't let others decide what happens to your image. Think before you share. Learn more at netsmarts.org. And hey, if your image is already out there, know that it's not your fault. For information about removing sexual pictures and videos from the internet, visit missingkids.org/gethelpnow.
So that's probably one of my favorite videos. We have tons, right? That's probably my favorite because I hope you recognize that there's no judgment involved, right? Like, look, this is what could potentially happen if you make this choice, if you make this decision. Something we've learned about in this field is that, simply telling kids no, don't do this, hasn't necessarily been very successful, right? But when we have open and honest conversations, when we provide guidance, and when we talk about consequences, and we empower children to make better choices, and we assure them that we are here to listen and we're ready to help them if and when something like this happens, they're more apt to do so. One of the takeaways from that study that I've referenced to that I'd like to share is that the majority of the kids still said that if something were to happen, or if they had questions about these issues, they'd still go to their trusted adult, their parents, right? So it's just a new way, and it's not so new, right? Not so novel anymore for children to express themselves and to explore their curiosities. So with that in mind, we've got to make sure that we're talking about some of those consequences so that they can make better informed decisions. We hope that they won't, right? But we still have to explain to them why they shouldn't, right? So the video does a great job of outlining each of these: humiliation, bullying, blackmail, school discipline, because it does happen on school grounds a lot. And this is not, there is no commonality across, race or socioeconomic. If a kid has a cell phone, if a kid has a smart device, it's an issue, right? So there's not a lot of wiggle room to say, one group of kids is more apt than another. No, it's an issue of access, right? And so police involvement, of course. I'm in Austin, Texas, by the way. I don't know if I shared that. And every state, every county, every jurisdiction is different, but everywhere it's still illegal to create and disseminate child sexual abuse material, regardless if you are a minor or not, right? The consequences are different in every jurisdiction, but police can absolutely get involved. There's still a crime being committed, right? And children need to understand that. The law has kept up with the technology somewhat, but you don't want to play that game and find out if you are in a jurisdiction where a judge may be more apt to give your child, some sort of counseling session or than jail time, right? So it's important that our children understand that, yes, this is a crime, regardless if the two of you are minors, right? So again, every jurisdiction different, but worth having that conversation as well. So how do we talk about it? From all of these things, as I mentioned, the most important to really, really highlight is to discuss healthy relationships with your children. Make sure that they understand that in a healthy relationship, someone will not force them to do something that they don't want to do, right? again, a lot of these things may seem like common sense to us, but think about your 14-year-old self or your 15-year-old self. Did anyone ever really sit down and talk to you about what a healthy relationship looked like? Or was your dad more like mine and like, nope, you can't date till you're 30? And then when I finally did date in high school, you will be home at 10 and you will take your brother with you. Yes, that was my dad's parenting style. But did he ever talk to me? He was the best. My dad was awesome. But did we have these kinds of discussions at that young age? Not really, and I think it's okay. It's okay for us to admit that and recognize that, maybe I wasn't talked to about this, but I can learn how to have this conversation with my kid, right? Do they know? Have they heard me say? Have I modeled a healthy relationship for them? Do they understand that it's okay to say no, right? When they're asked to do these kinds of things. That's a very important way to help to prevent a lot of these things. Talk about ways an image can spread online. One of the most troubling things is that, as I mentioned before, the internet is forever. Anyone can take a screenshot. They can send it to all of their contacts in their phone, who share it to someone else, who upload it. And next thing you know, it's on Reddit. It's being downloaded by some horrible people. Is that a worst case scenario? Sure, right? But is it impossible? Absolutely not. No, we see this all the time. We receive millions of tips to the cyber tip line every year, and they come from somewhere, right? Sometimes it's simply a case of a child who has, who thought that it was going to their boyfriend or girlfriend. They break up. The way that these photos end up circulating all over the world is pretty frightening, right? It can happen very quickly, and so we need to make sure kids understand that as well. Empower them with the information that they need to make better choices. So again, report anything related to this issue to the cyber tip line, and we can help to get resources to you as well. One thing I hope you caught from the video is that we do work with folks to help to remove images that have been placed on various social media sites and websites. We do have strong working relationships with all social media platforms just about, and we can certainly help should you have a child in your life, or if you're a child serving professional on your client list, we can do that. We can help you with that, and of course, free of charge. We also have a peer support network of other survivors who have been exploited online, who maybe have had their sexting images spread without their consent, who are willing and able and ready to help to speak to you or your child should they ever be in this situation. So let's talk about online solicitations. This is, for a lot of folks, especially 5 or 10 years ago, when they hear this, they think about Dateline, right? And they think about, the guy coming out to say, hey, you're on Dateline and all of that. And while I'm super excited that it shed more awareness and light on the issue, what gets lost are all of the reasons why this happens in the first place, right? How did this person get access to our child? How did this happen? Well, let's talk about it. Let's walk through it. So most solicitations happen on social networking sites, at least based on the data. Again, millions of reports received at the cyber tip line every year. Most occur among older teens, although we are starting to see that skew younger, as I mentioned throughout the presentation, because of access at a younger age. Most teens are solicited by their peers, and most are not bothered by it. That breaks my heart, right? Especially because it's become such a part of the online experience that our kids know that it's going to happen already, right? That they don't even think that they can do anything about it. They just accept that it's going to happen. And I'll show an example of what that looks like. But again, it's happening on social networking sites. And when I say social networking, it's not just your Instagram and your Snapchat and your Twitter and TikTok. It's also our gaming platforms where folks have the opportunity to chat and game online with one another. We've really got to expand our understanding of what that means. Again, where the kids are, the predators go. So offenders groom children. Again, think about well, did we ever really stop to think, well, how did this person gain access to this child, right? The parents were just not supervising their kid. That's not the whole story, right? Offenders do their work. So let's call back to our discussion about personal online safety, right? If we haven't had a discussion with our kid about what's okay to post and not, if we haven't talked to them about setting privacy settings on all of their social media accounts, they're pretty easy to reach, right? So if they're playing a game, a couple of cases that come to mind from colleagues, if they're playing a game online and this young child, their whole life is about Roblox or Minecraft or whatever that may be. And I'm not calling out any one platform, but if so much of their identity and their free time is on gaming, And I know I'm not going to give my kid $100 to get to the next level, or to get a sword, or to get coins. I'm just not going to do it, right? Some kids can be coerced to produce content, right, for those purposes. And Yep, we've definitely seen that. So, but let me back up a little bit. Offenders groom children by exploiting their natural curiosity. So what does that mean? First and foremost, offenders generally cast a wide net, right? They're going to cast a wide net and try to get, someone to respond. And so again, that could look like, hey, sliding into those DMs, right? Sending a direct message and saying something like, you're beautiful. I work for a modeling agency. It could be something like, hey, because their privacy settings aren't set, so we can go and look at their profile. Hey, I like that band too. Or, hey, I'm in the band and I play that instrument as well. Or I play football, or I cheer, whatever, right? Looking for commonalities because we haven't talked to our kids about personal online safety settings, right? So they start, and most kids, most often, but not always, are going to say, yeah, I don't know you, and block, delete, and move on, right? But that's not always the case. So they exploit that natural curiosity, and sometimes it's children are vulnerable, period, because they're kids, right? They haven't been on the earth long enough to recognize some of these dangers. Some kids have additional vulnerabilities, right? They may be going through a difficult time. They may not feel that they have anyone to speak to. Offenders, predators, that is what they love to exploit, right? So, and as I mentioned, other things that aren't, other things such as a child's, desire to move up to a game, right? And it doesn't happen that quickly. They exploit that natural curiosity. They start to become friends with the child by faking commonalities based on what they find online about the child, right? Based on what they talk about online during that gaming time, right? Once they've established trust, once they've established common interests that are totally bogus, then they'll start gradually. And again, we're going to get a little graphic, but again, on the other side is understanding and preventing, right? So then they might start saying things like, well, have you ever seen a picture of a penis or of breasts, right? And of course, not those words. Oh, you haven't? Well, let me show you. It's no big deal. I mean, you're 12, you're 13, you should have seen this by now, right? I'll show you. We're friends, remember? I'm just going to show you. And so then they kind of normalize that over time. And then once they've normalized or desensitized the child, then they'll ask the child, well, will you send me a picture and I'll send you a picture. But again, it's based first on building a false sense of trust, right? They're exploiting our children. And then once they obtain those photos and videos, they use their adult status to control their behavior, right? Well, you sent these to me and I already know where you live. I know where your parents work. I know where you go to school. And if you don't continue to make these photos and videos for me, I'm going to share them with everybody. That has happened over and over and over and over again. The technology has changed. Which social media platforms are cool or not have changed, but the methodology is not, right? Predators are always on top of where the kids are, right? So they use their adult status, and the same thing as with in-person child abuse. This is child abuse, folks, right? If you tell, I'll hurt you, I'll hurt your parents, the same kinds of things, right? So this is why some children get involved in these long-term situations where they've been exploited by an offender for years at a time in some instances, right? They'll offer gifts like cell phones and gift cards. Now it's a little bit easier because they can send online gift cards and things, tokens and access to levels and armaments and all of these kinds of things in games that kids like to play, right? Again, super important to have conversations about privacy and about expectations, especially when it comes to gaming with strangers and talking to strangers online, right? Do we know what platforms they're using? Do we know who they're following and who's following them, right? All of that is so that we can prevent these kinds of things from happening. Have we talked to them about healthy relationships? Have we made sure that they are able to trust us, that they feel that they can trust us when they have questions, right? Are we responding in anger or disgust when they approach us with some strange off-the-wall questions? Are we responding as we should, right? All of these things come together to hopefully to prevent this from happening to one more child, right? So what are some signs of grooming, some things to look for? And again, sometimes these are things that just teenagers do, but in concert with one another, some things to look for. If your child is receiving gifts, right, it's not enough to say, hey, why, where'd you get those shoes? You know your kid doesn't have a job or money. And if they say, oh, so-and-so, we traded shoes and just borrowing their shoes, it's cool. Cool, let me call their mom or dad or whomever and see, because I'm going to need your shoes back, right? We need to follow up, right? I know it's super easy to just hit auto pay, but we've got to make sure we're looking at our phone bills. Are they calling folks or texting at all hours, and to whom? Are these out of state, out of area codes? We need to know who they're talking to. We need to be proactive, right? Rejecting family and friends, again, some teenagers just do this anyway because we're no longer cool. But if they're doing this in concert with any of these other things, it's time to really consider what's happening. They're getting upset when they're not online and they're minimizing the screen, right? They're flipping over that phone. They're tossing that tablet and pretending to do something else. Nope, I need you to show me who you were talking to, what you were doing. I trust you to have access to this tablet and to my Wi-Fi. We're going to have this conversation, right? We've got to be proactive and be vigilant about some of the things that may be happening with our children. So the next video is pretty powerful, and I'm just going to dive right in. It addresses this. Pay attention to what the children or the actors who are portraying these actual cases are saying, how they were enticed, right? How they were tricked into believing that these predators were someone else. Oops.
It happened to be 5 years ago. My parents were divorcing and things at school and with friends weren't too good. I felt like the world was falling down around me. That's when I met someone online. We would chat about everything in my life. I finally had someone to take my side and see things my way. I had someone who put me first. No matter how much I thought we could trust each other, I knew better than to meet in person with someone I had met on the internet. But one day, when school was dismissed early, there was someone waiting for me at my front door. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. I learned the hard way that no matter who you think you're talking to online, there are people out there looking to hurt you. It doesn't matter if they're male or female, or if they look a little rough around the edges, or even if they're the most beautiful person. These people exist, online and in the real world.
It happened to me too. I was 14 and someone online sent me a private message. I shouldn't have responded, but I messaged back and 7 days later, agreed to be picked up outside of my house at midnight. I was taken to another house and what happened there was terrifying. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. I felt numb and powerless and didn't know what to do. I was too afraid to tell my parents and ashamed of what everyone would think of me. But hiding it was a mistake. I saw the car that I was taking and driving around my neighborhood all summer long. Was I being targeted again, or was someone else being victimized? I finally decided to tell someone.
I have to live with the decision I made to trust someone I met on the internet.
But the important thing is that I told someone. I'm not a victim, but a survivor.
So that video is pretty powerful, but I hope it does shed some light onto how some of these things can happen. And I also wanted to share that with you to highlight that this absolutely happens to young men as well. Absolutely. For whatever reasons, we know that boys are underreported, right? They underreport when these kinds of things happen to them. you know, as a society, we, you know, generally don't encourage boys to cry or to share. You know, we tell them to walk it off, you know, and be tough, right? You're not a man if you're not tough, right? And so sometimes, you know, young boys will internalize that to the point that they'll hold that in, for fear of being seen as anything less than a man, right? Or tough or strong or brave, right? That's horrible, right? We've got to make sure that our young men as well feel that they have a safe place in their trusted adults to talk about these issues. Two things from that video. The first young man mentioned how his parents were going through a divorce and he felt like he didn't have anyone to turn to. Well, lo and behold, here's someone whom he thought that he made a connection with, that understood him, that he could vent to and talk to, and it wasn't, right? Second scenario is similar, right? Our young boys also want to feel loved and cared for and connected and validated, right? And we can't discount that. And so a lot of times these kinds of things happen because no matter how many times or well, I'll back up. You know, I often joke, and I think Sandy's heard me say this, you know, about the show Catfish, right? And I often joke, well, gosh, how is the show still on the air? Don't these people know any better? So of course they do. We all do. But we're also always still looking for connection and validation. And most of the time at the end, you know, they'll ask this poor person in front of the whole world, you know, well, why did you do this? Why did you continue when you've never met them in person? Well, I was lonely, or he or she told me I was beautiful, or he or she told me that I mattered, right? So kids, adults too, are looking for validation, right? And sometimes they find it online, and sometimes it's not who they thought this person was, right? So we've got to have conversations with our children about these issues, right? Again, let's talk to our child about relationships. Let's set policies about meeting offline for older teens. I know it seems daunting, but we can do this, right? Know your child's online friends, right? Teach your child the warning signs, right? I joke, but it's true, right? I think my kid's gorgeous, but I'm also going to be very honest with her. Honey, you know, the Disney Channel is not going to message you on Instagram and say, hey, do you want your own show, right? We have to have these conversations with our children. Call the police if you suspect any of these things are happening and report it to the cyber tip line. We do work closely with law enforcement, obviously. When every report that is made to us, we simply just, we have an immense amount of resources at our fingertips that we utilize to help find evidence about suspects and victims to help law enforcement. And again, that mental health piece as well, which are, you know, free of charge, right, when you report to the cyber tip line. Kids are capable. I know, again, a little a little uncomfortable and disgusting is what I was going to say, but this is an actual tip that was filed and reported to a social media networking site. And of course, we have these relationships with them. They report to the cyber tip line. We do the research and then send it to the appropriate jurisdiction, right? So this is exactly what this looks like. You know, again, these shows like Law and Order and Dateline, you know, sometimes folks think that you need this immense, you know, trove of evidence, and you don't. This is it, right? Want to trade like nudes, I'll go first. The child knew what to say, no, right? And what he sent was a picture of his penis, right? So she knew what to do, reported it to the site. She had these conversations. They reported it to the National Center. We're able to dig, find information, package this, send it to law enforcement so that they can go and arrest this guy, right? And keep this person from doing it to another child. This child knew what to do and where to go. She had conversations with her mom. We can have those conversations too. Kids can easily report this to the cyber tip line. In fact, kids report every day, right? So we have to empower them with the information as well. Sometimes kids will call or make reports because they fear that their classmate may be victimized or may be falling prey to child sex trafficking or whatever that may be. When we empower our children with this information, they're going to use it, right? So just an example to remind us all that kids are capable of doing this as well. Things to report to the tip line: anyone who sends your child photos or videos containing obscene content, anyone who asks your child to send sexual images, who speaks to your child in a sexual manner. That's why it's very important if your children are gaming. I know, I get it. You know, I work from home, my kids going to school we're all at home, and sometimes you just want to give them headphones. But if they're allowed to game and they have some sort of gaming headset or any kind of headphones, you know, you need to be in the room. You need to hear who they're speaking with, right? We need to do spot checks and make sure that we know. Some pretty disgusting language is happening in a lot of these gaming sites, and we've got to be able to make sure that our kids know that we're listening, we're paying attention, and we know what's happening, right? And of course, anyone who asks your child to meet in person, please report them to the cyber tip line. I know that was a lot to digest. We have one more topic, and then I think we're running. I'm going to be late. We're until 7, right, Sandy? Okay, so just have a few more minutes. So I'm going to quickly go through cyberbullying. That's does not take away from the seriousness, but I want to make sure you have time for questions. But obviously, cyberbullying is bullying aided by technology. A few things I want to point out here is just to expand your definition. It's not just sending threatening or harassing comments. It's absolutely photoshopping pictures. It's creating those fake profiles to humiliate a child, right, online. Any one of these things is considered cyberbullying. Photoshopping things I've seen, right? The bully may Photoshop a picture of a child onto the body of an animal, right, and create a video and send it all throughout campus, right, to everyone. You know, this is cyberbullying. The difference, of course, it spreads faster. It has a wider audience, a global audience even, and it follows children home, right? It's devastating because there is no respite for a child who is being cyberbullied and likely statistically being bullied in person as well, right? So it's absolutely devastating. But one thing to share with you is suicide among cyberbullying victims is rare. Of course, these instances garner a lot of media attention. Of course, this is a horrible thing, but it is rare. And we share that to remind you that there is hope, right? No one wants to think about their child being in this situation. It feels hopeless, but it's not. And you've certainly made a friend here at the National Center to guide you through some of this as well. Again, reach out to us. We can help you with a ton of resources. The next video is a spoken word piece by a teenager who submitted to this annual contest to talk about his relationship with online social media platforms. And I'm going to skip that for now. It is available on our website, but it's just a perspective as an adult to kind of have a bird's eye view of what children are thinking when they're engaging online. Do remember that cyberbullying does, of course, require the bully, a victim, and the bystander. It's important to understand that when we're empowering our children to make better choices, right, about how to help a potential victim and what to do if they're a victim. Some things to look for. Our teen who's always online isn't online all of a sudden, right? They didn't have some personal, renaissance. Something's probably happening. They're acting nervous instead. If they're going to school hybrid or virtual, or they have an online assignment, they're really, really not excited about it. They're withdrawing and they seem uneasy about going to school. This may very well be happening. It's time to have a conversation. How to help support your child problem solve. The slide says consider saving the evidence. Belinda says save it, block, set up new accounts, talk to the school. Most districts have a zero tolerance policy. Report it to the cyber tip line and get some help for your child. Quickly, I'll share, no one wants to consider that their kid may be the bully, but it takes two to tango. A bully comes from somewhere. So things to consider, one that's not on the slide that I want you to be aware of. If they're laughing all the time when they're online and you come around and ask what's so funny, hey, what's going on? What are you looking at? They flip it over, they close it. Something's going on, right? A cyberbully wants a reaction out of the child. It's time to investigate a little bit further, right? So in addition to all of those things, keep that in mind, right? We need to be able to ask those questions and follow up. How to prevent it, monitor and intervene in your child's online behavior the same way you would offline. And that goes for all of the things we talked about tonight. Establish those expectations, set consequences, and let's model good online behavior with one another as well, right? Even though they're not on Facebook, they know we are. And believe me, they're looking, right? So we've got to model good online behavior as well. Talk about not being a bystander. Your child may not necessarily have to put themselves in harm's way, but they can come to you as their trusted adult or whomever that trusted adult is to say, so-and-so is being cyberbullied, can't even get through our online homework assignment because, so-and-so is doing X, Y, and Z. I don't want the school to know I'm telling, can you help? Yes, I can, right? So make sure that our children understand that they can come to us as well to help and that they can advocate as well for their fellow students. So the National Center doesn't advocate for any one particular filtering or monitoring software because and again, these are all things you can consider to do, but we don't advocate for any one particular app or software because as we started, we will end. Technology can't catch everything, so we must communicate, right? Address those blind spots, talk about even those things that we may think are common sense. For more resources, we have all of these and more at the website that I shared with you and that is on your screen. So much more from kids, kinder through 12. And again, my name is Belinda Swan. You can email me directly anytime if you have any questions. You can report to the cyber tip line here and call, of course, 1-800-THE-LOST anytime. 20 seconds to spare. Thank you so much for your time. Are there any questions or thoughts? It's a lot. I know it's a lot of information. You'll probably think of something at 2 in the morning, and that's okay. Send me an email. And if you forget this email address, reach out to Sandy and she knows how to find me. But thank you for devoting your evening to this topic. It's very important. And I mean it when I say it. You have a new friend at the National Center, resources, additional information, please call on me and I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you so much, Belinda, for that. That was a lot of incredible information. It was so very helpful. I do love that you mentioned a few times that a lot of it is available on the website. So that is great resource to keep in mind. Denise, thank you so much for joining us. And anybody that is listening to this or watching this later, you too can reach out to Belinda or myself, and we can help you with anything. And so Denise has asked in the chat, how do we find this presentation?
Sure. If you go to missingkids.org, or, an even simpler way, if you just Google NetSmart's resources, that page is going to pop right up. And the presentations are in the middle of the page, followed by all of the tip sheets. Another quick and easy way, once you are on our website, use that search bar and search for videos, and every single video and more will pop right up. So again, you can Google NetSmart's, NETSMARTZ resources, and that's the quickest way to find our resources.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to stick that really quickly in the chat. She's wanting to know the presentation you're sharing tonight. Will that show up in the resource on that website as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As well as Spanish version as well. If there's a need for that in your community. And I'm also bilingual and happy to assist with any of those issues or questions as well.
Awesome. She says, thank you. And so do I. So that website is in the chat for easy access. And just in case, so Belinda's is on the screen and mine is in the chat if you need to reach out for anything. So thank you again so much, Belinda. And I greatly appreciate you and your time. And I guess that's it if there are no more questions.
No problem. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.